How are things?
They're all right. I was just looking at something from C Sharp 11. They're adding file um, file modifiers, like access modifiers, so that you can create types that will be file local without entering in like your namespace or whatever.
Nerd.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited about it because it gives it'll give C Sharp a way to better encapsulate certain things. I just wish it was. It doesn't really say if it's just at the type level or if you can actually do like a file. Like if you can do a file access modifier for a constructor, that would be kind of like a game changer for certain patterns that I use. But
C sharp is like a 80-year-old man with a jet black toupee. Like it just needs to like say my time is done. It was a good time, and I'm gonna stop trying to be something that I'm not. That's
okay,
my analogy.
well, it's better than Java, anyways. Screw Java. Hate Java.
Is Java still revving up its versions,
I think
or
so. I don't
did
know.
they declare it done?
I don't know. I don't know anybody who. It's weird. I've never worked at a shop that. Well, and I suppose because you kind of pick your technology, but I've never really worked at a shop that's used Java. So, like in earnest, like we there's a couple things that I worked on in the past that were more Java based. I just hated the ecosystem because it seemed like it was
That's
excessively
very
complex
different.
to work with. Yeah, it's
I
just like
just, I mean, I just remember a couple times having to install Android Studio and just having to look up every single term to figure out what it meant. Like, and obviously I can't think of an example
yeah.
right now, but what is an example? Like, I just felt like I had to go. I felt like I had to install things or configure things just to build or compile
Yeah, yeah,
while in Android Studio. It's
yeah. Well,
already
you have
like
to have.
focused on Android, right? But I felt like I still had to configure something just to be able to compile my Android program. I could be wrong. I might be
Yeah,
confusing it with something else,
I
but
mean, you have to install a compiler and all that, but I don't know. It's just I think that the developer experience with Microsoft tools is just like way better
I mean
than.
that's because we're biased because we don't know Java tools, or do you?
Well, I've had to like install and use Java tools, and every time it's like a struggle. Plus, like now there's like paywalls for certain things,
Hey,
or not
gambler.
paywalls, but there's like give me your information walls
Yeah.
with Java because Oracle is like owns them, and I don't know. Say what you want about Microsoft, but it's not nearly as ugly as Oracle has ever been. Oracle's just like it totally flipped it because they used to be like, oh, Microsoft, so blah blah blah, and there are all these people that hated Microsoft, and
You know.
Oracle is that, and they own Java.
Yeah. You know what the perfect job is for smart people that have low self-esteem?
Smart people with low self esteem. I don't know, probably software engineer.
Yep. It's the only job where I literally take screenshots of my editor and share it with my coworkers, in which I'm telling them, "Hey, the following support is provided," but really I'm just bragging why my code is so much better or why I'm such an elite programmer compared to them. Like I want to put in like small captions. Notice how I don't have any conditional statements. All your code does. My code, it already knows what it's working with. because I'm that type of developer. My code is smart and
Conditional
elegant.
statements like you're
If
talking like
switch,
ifs. What are
yeah.
you using? Are you using like conditional expressions then, or
I tend to just
switches, or
I, t- I know I tend to just rely on very strong types, even when I brute force it in C sharp.
so if you have like a
So
business rule that's like,
notice how I didn't say 100%
oh,
100% of the time. I
you're
never
saying
have
like you don't
conditional
have
statements.
condition statements like is this null?
Yeah,
Is
yeah.
this match formatting or whatever like that? Yeah,
For the most part. I mean,
yeah,
obviously there's I have way less conditional statements than mainstream code, and my stuff, low self-esteem, pick me up. My stuff tends to be a lot more legible, a lot more focused on what the objective is. Well, I love writing tests because my tests are to the point. It tells you exactly what the test is, what the test cares about. And all that other noise that has nothing to do with what's being tested, all that stuff, it just doesn't exist for the most part. But in a lot of shops that I try to support, like the tests tend to have a lot of noise and details about things that the test really shouldn't care about.
yeah. You know
And
what I think
I
that
don't
is?
know I don't know how to help people get better at that.
It's probably called get rid of code coverage requirements. I think that code coverage requirements probably require people to write tests for things that they just that are stupid, like just completely stupid. Like once
Yeah,
the measure becomes the goal, it's like ceases to become a good measurement, right? That's like a
I
rule.
agree.
And I just it code coverage requirements is just that's got to be the one thing that I want to avoid like the plague.
I mean, it's
It doesn't even
it,
imply that you wrote the test correctly. It just means that
I know.
like you wrote something that executed that stuff. It doesn't mean
Uh,
that it's right.
I've seen so many tests that do absolutely nothing because I force the developers to write a test to prove that their code works, to prove, quote unquote, air quotes, that their code works. And you won't believe, maybe you will, how much cruft they write that doesn't actually test what needs to be tested, right?
Yeah.
They'll basically write the automated tests in which the automated test is performing the behavior on the system instead of executing the behavior on the system. Like, and I've worked with some people that are like considered rock star engineers when it comes to like UI development, and they can't write it. They can't write an automated checklist that demonstrates confidence that their code works. They can't do it.
Yeah.
Why am I the only person that cares about automated testing?
You're not.
Why
Plenty
am
of
I
people
the
that do.
annoying person?
I don't know. For me, I haven't found a good way to do it at like the and we've talked about this so many
Yeah, we
times.
talked
Like
about it like a dozen
the
times.
unit test level where the unit is a method, like that seems to be what people want to do, and it doesn't. I haven't found a like the only tests I've found value in writing have been things like because I'm gonna run the code anyways and verify the behavior at an full integration level. But the only tests I found valuable are things that I need to document dynamic things, like
Yes.
stuff where if you don't know this dynamic, the way this was set up dynamically, like you could easily not understand this and break it. Um, Anything with a reflection, hands down, like will probably have unit tests attached to it. Like you know, even at the method level, because I need to make sure that if somebody adds something that it checks to make sure that that dynamic nature of that thing is still maintained. But other than that, man, I don't know.
Gambler says I like Java tools, .NET tools. However, that is a strong bias because I'm just more familiar with it. And the Microsoft tooling improved a lot over the years and didn't work much with .NET the last 4 years. PS, also since JetBrains has their own IDE now, the familiarity gap in that regard closed, as all the things I'm familiar in Java IDE are now available in .NET. So gap is probably super close by now, even for me. I assume you're referring to Ryder, Gambler. Um, I forgot what we were just talking about. Oh yeah, 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 yeah. So like when I'm doing like when I'm building like mobile solutions, I usually write a automated test that triggers a command on the view model, and then I verify that the properties um, on that object or on that view model mutated to something expected.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I
yeah,
think it would be a little different if I was doing something with, doing more with like a WPF type thing. I don't know.
yeah,
Like I could
there
see
is no
testing view
WPF anymore.
models, yeah, or
Yeah,
XAML or whatever.
yeah.
But just the idea of view models and testing view models in terms of this command triggers these response behaviors. It's pretty straightforward, but I don't
I
know.
want I want them to include my GitHub repos in my obituary. That's how I want to be remembered. They could throw it in the appendix of my obituary. Do obituaries have appendices?
Just you attach your resume, your CV, whatever. Just zero bit. Be like, in case there's an
uh,
afterlife that is basically this over again.
yeah, my resume is a lot more
Remember me.
interesting than my personal life. It really is, or my social life.
Yeah, that's now that might be
Sad.
true for me. I don't know. I don't have it very interesting either. Good job on doing running this week, though, man. It's good stuff.
Yeah,
I haven't run since that 26K, but my nephew reminded me there's this 5K turkey run on Thanksgiving coming up or around Thanksgiving. So he kind of like wants to do it. So I'm like, well, maybe I'll focus down on just trying to get a good 5K time and start back up on November 1st here. But
yeah. I just gotta consistently do 4 miles with emphasis on consistently. Like that has to be my new normal if I'm ever going to do a half marathon again. In which
yeah,
you should add on your bucket list. I don't know. You told me you don't have a passport, but you should put on your bucket list doing a half marathon in a foreign country.
if I did, it'd probably be a half marathon in Canada. Although I don't know if I'd be allowed into Canada, so I don't know what the rules are.
I thought you had Polish in you.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't mind going to Poland. Um, Maybe not in the current climate with Ukraine, but
Or you should do it in Kenya.
can you? Yeah,
Be last place.
that'd be a good movie. Chubby white guy decides to go to Kenya to compete with elite Kenyan runners. It'd be like the opposite of coming to America. Call it like coming to Kenya or something like that.
I'm trying to figure out what is it, Nairobi? That's the capital.
Yeah, I just that would be kind of a funny like flip on the like coming to America, but just the opposite, just coming to Kenya.
Run a
But
run a marathon in Ethiopia. It doesn't even have to be sanctioned by the government. You just run from people. So
yeah, yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'll be going to Africa or any other foreign nation anytime soon.
you
I
should
actually
run
can go
in.
to. I could go to Mexico. I think because I have a pass card thingy, so my license. I think actually I don't know if it works with Mexico. I know it works with Canada.
I'll never forget when I did the half marathon in Mexico City. Like I was probably on like between my sixth and like maybe eighth mile, and I got passed up by like this grandmother. This lady had to be like in her late 50s. and she
I've had that
passed me.
happen.
She
They're
passed
just kind of like,
me. Yeah, I mean, obviously she was. I mean, she. It kind of wasn't fair because she was like probably under 5 feet, and she probably weighed like less than 100 pounds. But she damn near lapped me, if there was such a thing. So
okay, so I just checked. Yeah, I can go to Canada. I can be allowed well, I can be allowed re-entry into the United States via land and sea from Canada, Mexico, Bermuda, and Caribbean without my passport, just with my driver's license, basically. That's cool because I have an enhanced ID with a chip in it, RFID chip. But
uh,
yeah, yeah, I've had that experience though, where I can just like people are like, I'm gonna beat that person, and then like you reach like one of the later miles, and they just boop, 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 and you're like,
uh,
yeah, I don't know. Today, this week, work wasn't too bad because I had a couple like tickets where like I actually felt like I was contributing to the world. You know, like oh, this will actually help people. That's exciting, and not majorly, but at least it has like a visible like change that people who are using our platform will see. And then I'm like done with that, and then it's like, god damn, now I just got shit show things again to work on. So, oh man, I don't know. I was less inclined to go and look at job boards this week. So
I don't know. I think I respond to job postings on LinkedIn probably twice a week. But
yeah,
you know what's interesting is you go through like 3 or 4 rounds of interviews, and they never notify you that they chose to like move on or pass. They just they
they
even
ghost you,
yeah,
huh?
that's my old job.
Are are you
Rockwell
done?
Automation ghosted me
Oh,
after like the third or fourth interview.
recently?
hmm
Oh,
I interviewed with them. My last interview with them was I think like 3 weeks ago.
gotcha.
Now, I mean, if they're still like if it takes them like 6 weeks to interview candidates before they make a decision, I think I could understand it, but I never got any type of like I don't know
Maybe they're out there thoroughly reviewing everything in your
advisory.
GitHub.
Nah.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean, but it's the same organization where like I never got a confirmation about my the date and time of my interview. Like, so some of their emails would go into my junk folder, and then like the recruiter like, Scott, where are you at? Your interview is here. Your interview is on. I'm like, well, no one confirmed with me that the interview was going to be at this time. Well, can you get on the call? I'm like, that happened like 2 times. And I'm
Hmm.
like, you guys suck at managing expectations. Like, you don't confirm with me when the interview is. You send the email and don't bother looking to see if I confirmed or not.
Hmm.
It's kind of a red flag, right?
Yeah. Are you done with your current place then, or your old place, or
Nah,
your recent place?
nah. But the short answer is no. But I don't know. I feel as if they're probably going to like terminate my contract.
Hmm. Then it'll be 100% beach delivery all the time.
I say that like every 3 months. I'm like, yeah, they're about to terminate it, and then I get extended again. I'm like, okay.
How
Postpone
long
beach
do your
delivery.
yeah? How long does it go?
It's 3 months at a time.
Oh, okay. Hmm.
I really want to. I really want to. I keep saying it. I really want to push beach delivery over the finish line. I just don't want to invest time after work or even before work. I
Yeah.
don't, because then I'm not going to make time to try to stay physically active, hence personal fitness.
Hmm.
I am learning new Azure things though, like querying application insights programmatically
Hmm. Telemetry and observability.
using Azure.monitor.query NuGet package.
Cool. I installed Elixir again, but I haven't done anything with it.
I haven't
I
listened
don't know,
to a
man.
Elixir podcast in a while.
I don't know. And then I started looking at Orleans. I don't know, man. I don't have any like I don't have any problems to solve where I want to work on a side project and just to do like something. It's not just enough to do like a simple like to do app or like I don't know. It's just not like it used to be. Like I want to build something that's useful to people. I don't want to just code for the sake of coding.
Write a game in Elixir, at least the back end server part.
Yeah, I could. The actor model stuff, but I don't know. But then it's like the right active writing a game and coming up with the actual like product. Like I need a problem space that I care about and an actual like mission to want to do anything. Okay,
You can write enterprise checkers.
yeah. I mean, you get me into my job, and man, every problem we come up with, I can think of like 10 solutions for, and come up with new ideas and stuff like that. Just boom, 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 like a friggin' fountain.
How's your mind? How's your mind? What is your mind defaulted to when you're approaching uh, programming challenges? Do you automatically does your mind default to writing the programming to abstractions first, or do you like program to like the literal like implementation details for that specific problem?
I guess I'm not sure what you mean. Usually I'll model so like advent of code, for instance. I don't know if you've done that, but um, the advent of code problems, I'll usually try to model out the described like scenario or whatever in terms of I usually do the data modeling and then work on the behavior. So it's like I think they'll have something like actually could probably look at how I did some of those. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but gosh, let me check you. Just grab one
Like
random one.
like for example, there might be a requirement where you need to um, register a new user, okay, onto a platform.
Okay.
And so I think the mainstream way of doing that is you you take the you take the first name, last name, I don't know, email address, and you declare a new user, and then you say uh, if user doesn't already exist, function or method, and then you start writing out your SQL connection, and you pull down entity framework, and then you create some tables, and then you query the database to see if that user exists, and then you perform an insert on the condition that the user doesn't exist. Like that, I would say is probably mainstream like way of registering a user versus um, I think what you said, domain modeling, not caring about the implementation details, and you instead of having like working with a user class, you have like a new user class, right? And instead of relying on a SQL connection, you just write an abstract method called, you know, store user, right? That takes a new user
Yeah.
parameter, right?
Yeah, I think that so it's yeah, so now I see what you're getting at. That particular like scenario is so simple that it's like it's almost crud, right? It's just um I might not spend it because I don't spend a lot of time writing registration, but I get what you're getting at. Yeah. No, I do I will usually go into um when I actually get to coding, I usually start with that core domain part and then work my way out from there. Although there's sometimes like if entity framework is if I'm doing it with entity framework, um, like the I will like make the models compatible with that. Um, but yeah.
What's interesting though is if 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 someone was interviewing and that was the programming challenge, the person that writes specific to the implementation details and have all these conditional statements checking the state will probably get the interview. Will probably get hired during that interview during that programming challenge than the person that programs to abstraction that doesn't demonstrate the third party vendor implementation details of configuring a SQL connection, pulling down entity framework, NuGet package, um, wiring all that up. The person that programs with all the implementation details are more likely to demonstrate quote unquote. It's weird. They demonstrate their experience because a lot of jobs they care about the vendor tools versus like how do you provide a maintainable solution and take us through your thought process. What are the stages that you're going to take us through as you build the solution, and how can you demonstrate that its maintainability over time? Like, well, those questions aren't going to be asked, but
Yeah. No, I get it. Um, the one thing I haven't I still do and I haven't really made the leap yet is I still do a lot of stuff in transaction scripts. Um, the thing is almost most of the domains I've worked in, there's very little actual business logic where like a rich domain is needed. I still break out a domain and all that, and I'll have certain domain commands and or domain services and stuff like that. Like, but a lot of it ends up being in transaction scripts because it's like 90% crud stuff. I have
mm.
yet to I have yet to get into like a place where there is a truly rich domain that you have to modify and model with a lot of rules and all that kind of stuff.
You don't think when you take into consideration security and without focusing on the third party solutions that that introduces a rich programming model when it comes to authorization, aka like permissions to particular features that one can have access to on the platform that you're building.
Um, I mean, so that can be like if we're talking about like is this user part of a group and then what actions they have access to.
Yeah. So for example, the like performing a delete or a soft delete, and the mainstream way is um, you the mainstream way is you probably pass in the user ID that wants to do the delete, and then you would query the database maybe to see if they have permission to do that role. I don't know if that's the mainstream way, right? And then you do a delete versus an alternative way is declaring a delete method, and within that method signature, you have to have an admin user as the parameter to perform a delete.
Oh yeah, no. So I mean, I'm if I'm doing that, I'm mostly using um, I wouldn't say it's not. I probably wouldn't use role based anymore for anything. It'd all be action based authentication, but or authorization rather. But I wouldn't ever. I would rarely ever model that directly into the uh, into the actual domain because it's usually set more dynamically. So rather than saying that modeling that there's an admin in the domain, I would probably rely on the idea that this particular user exists within a group that has that permission. An admin is whether that is referred to as admin or customer service
Oh,
or
that's a good point.
whatever, because if you think about like permission models for, let's say, for any of the major like stuff, but TFS comes to mind. Like what you do is like you go in there and you can say, hey, create a group called my team, and then give my team permissions over these things, but don't give them delete permissions or whatever.
Mm.
But you might then say add a sub user to that permission that says, okay, this person explicitly grant, or you might say grant everybody in this thing permission on this, but then explicitly disallow these people to do it or whatever. GitHub's this way too. You add teams to things, but then you can get down to the granular person level and say don't allow them to do this or that. Um, in terms of like if they're admin or what. But so I mean, that's the thing is I wouldn't model
That, mm.
that into the domain. I usually leave access concerns as more of like an application layer thing rather than a core domain thing. But
I think
do you ever? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
no, I was going to say I guess we have a difference of opinion because to me, an actor that a system is designed to support is part of the domain. That's my opinion.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'd say a user is definitely, but their permission or what? Well, and it depends on if like that classification has some sort of other thing, but I wouldn't use it for um, to execute stuff because that's all at the application layer usually. But um,
Well,
well,
the
yeah,
application layer has like the registry of users mapped to like what they're authorized to do or what they have permissions for, right?
yeah,
But at a method level,
yeah. So it depends on if it's like
I feel like you still have to represent. I feel like it would still be advantageous to represent that in order to perform a delete, that there has to. I would think that there should be some type that represents the ability to delete versus just some primitive like unique identifier for an end user, and then having to check if they have permission to do it.
yeah. Well, I mean, maybe there's something where maybe there's something where the delete method would take in order to take it, you do have to take an authorized user in, and in order to oh, but yeah, because then you'd end up having to make like, yeah, I could see your point now. You'd be getting very fine grained on your types though if you wanted to do this for every single um, action, which might be somewhat problematic. But I get what you're saying now. So even if I wouldn't model it as, let's say, an admin though, but if you're saying you could model a authorized delete user as a type, or a delete authorized user, let's say, is the type, right? And then you actually have a method, or the authorization logic has to run in order to create that type, regardless of whether the user is an admin or what
Yeah,
groups they're part of. Yeah, okay. Then you have to pass that in. So you have to create the type in order to have permission to even call the method, because if you don't have that type instantiated, then you're screwed. And the only way to instantiate it is through some sort of an authorization
yeah,
call. That way, there's no uh, there's no chance that you didn't authorize the person because the type system enforces it.
and,
Yeah,
and,
that's
and
why I
that's
was going back
usually
to it. That's why I'm thinking file scoped types would be really good within C sharp because you can do more information hiding, but only if it's actually a modifier on methods and
and
constructors.
that's what I usually try to practice. I'll have smart constructors that will either return like some or none if that value can be created or not. And that's the
Yeah,
like you said, that
and
that's the
yeah,
only way
maybe
that
if
value can exist before you pass it to a method that won't compile unless it has that parameter type.
yeah, and maybe it wouldn't be that heavy because really what you're doing is just creating. You'd probably have some sort of like base abstraction of an authorized user, and then each action it would just be a subtype of that in a discriminated union, right? Um, but or it would be a standalone type. Um, and so you'd call something like give me an authorized. Well, but then you'd still have to know what type you're using, unless you
No,
type.
it's a
Well, no, no,
discriminating
no, no,
union.
no, because if you have the command itself typed, right, which you should be able to do like a generic type where you say, hey, give me the, and then you'd probably define the authorized user as like as a implementation of an interface that says that this thing is attached to this action and give it. Yeah, there's probably an elegant way to do this without having to do like a lot of ceremony, or
Mhm.
just have just a shit ton of types in like many files that you'd have to worry about. But yeah, no, I get it now. Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. Yeah, no, I think that would be the ideal way to do stuff
I
actually.
mean that ish ton of types I think would change between C sharp and
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
in a functional programming language where you can use like
absolutely.
discriminated unions.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, yeah. I was just gonna ask you though, is do you ever, when you're thinking about the domain, do you ever think about try to model it in your head as if it's people with pens and paper running around? This is a trick that I use sometimes. Like,
People with pens and paper running around. What do you mean?
yeah, like to so every domain or everything we're ever modeling is really like some automation of, well, automated tasks that people could be doing. So I try to think about how would people do this if there was no automation, computers didn't exist. And that's the way I try to think about it. So like I had this recent example, right, where we're doing like a some work on a payment system, and the payment system has I model it as like, okay, there's this person in a cubicle, and they're the person who decides to cut the checks for or to dispatch a a request to cut a check for a particular person to get paid, right? And so then I think about like a hold is like a manager coming over with a post-it note saying, "Don't pay this person," like, and so they would put the post-it note up in their cubicle here, and then it's interesting because then you can start to describe like when things come into it and see if it fits into that model. Like, would it make sense for this person, whenever they receive a hold for this thing, to stand up and yell over to this other person in the cubicle to stop doing their thing, or that person to be responsible to go to a cubicle in another context, like they're to ask them to do these things.
That's how you flesh out the various components of a system
That's how I've come to use that as a way to think about modeling
or
systems.
actors.
Yeah, actors and what they're doing, and like what, like, contextually does it make sense if I was in, let's say, a this department or whatever. How do I know whether I'm talking to someone I should be talking to or whatever? I think about it in terms of like, does this pass the no computers smell test? Maybe. I
Yeah.
don't know.
So what I usually practice is I don't I try not to program where I model the real world systems, right? Because I think we all learned that we get in trouble when we try to model reality or how things work in reality. Instead, I try to model my programs based on the rules that reality operates off of, right, or operates on. And so instead of modeling the different actors and how and what the ceremony is between the different actors, um, I tend to just say these are the rules for when this event occurs, right? And a set of rules is basically a policy. And so here's a policy for when this event occurs. And I kind of just program based on that and not necessarily like imagining people and their different roles or functions. I just focus on what the rules are, that these
Yeah,
rules can't be broken.
and I don't want to say that I think about it in terms of like necessarily like an actor model type thing. It's more like so like a service
Well,
might
no,
be.
I didn't mean actor model. I meant
Yeah,
like literal actors or players of a system.
yeah, but so like anytime that you have, and the thing is like if you're automating a system, there's always going to be anything that you do. There's going to be a person. If you didn't have computers, there's going to be a person doing that thing. They are the computer, right? And
Okay.
so it's like thinking about the relationships between people and what like tasks might need to be involved to know, is it this person or this thing's responsibility? And that goes to a system. If you were to take like a unit or a component and pretend like this is a person, um, I think it like, and then start to apply things like single responsibility. It starts to make sense. Like, okay, would you have this person do this thing if they were in this job in addition to this thing? Ideally, it's like no, no. So why am I putting these two things together in the same like service or in the same like process or whatever,
Mm.
or component? Um, I don't know, but I feel like it like if you start to talk about things like people understand, I think it could help people understand design too. I've yet to find a good example where it doesn't like down to even like the repository pattern. It's getting into things like that. It's like, okay, it's like there's a file system over here. This person will put it in the file system when they're done and wait for some new instruction where they'd have to go and do something with it, you know? That doesn't always work out for like, there are like, sometimes you need to do like technical things to just try to make things partition because the world, you know, does like a person doesn't have to work with large data, but I don't know. I just don't know if I'm like the only one who does this. Just think about
I
modeling
think
things as
this is the first time I've heard of it. I mean, but I think it makes sense. Now you could just apply that to blockchain and what's that holiday
yeah.
programming thing called that you mentioned earlier?
Oh, Advent code.
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
do.
yeah. That's a little bit more. That's a different because it's more like a. Those are more like mathematical problems, but um, which are slightly different. There's not systems modeling, but even like if you think of beach delivery, like your beach delivery app, what if that was completely done by humans? Like you could kind of think about every single microservice or every single service within the system as like a human interacting to do things, right? And it would probably like quite clearly
Okay, so
separate
let's.
things.
I'm curious what your response to be. What your response would be. So, all right, let's take the human factor, and there are no computers. Okay,
Yeah.
what beach delivery does is uh, a customer on the beach places the order. Okay, what the program does is it says, "Hey, collect or give me all the couriers that are within 3 mile radius of this customer's GPS coordinate." And it collects all the couriers within the 3 mile radius of that coordinate. And then it pretty much goes through I don't, it's not a for loop because I'm functional, because I'm elite, whatever. But basically, I iterate through those that the result of the couriers that are within a 3 mile radius, and I give each one. Well, I say, hey, are you available to deliver this order? And they accept or decline. Let's say they decline. They decline. Hey, you're next, courier. Are you available to deliver this order? They decline. The third one accepts, right? When the third courier accepts, then the customer gets notified that, hey, this courier has accepted and is going to deliver your food. This courier is at this location, and there's like a path on the Google Maps
Hmm.
so that, but also the courier sees where the customer is, and there's a path, right? The path goes from where that actor is, whether it's the customer or the courier, and also where the stops are, like for example, or the pickups. That's the term. The pickup is um, I don't know, Denny's, right? The restaurant, and so there may be one or more pickups before the final destination,
Yep.
or in this case, the drop off. I'm, I feel like that would be more complicated.
It would be heck of really complicated, right? But it's not. But to think about in terms of human actors or people interacting with people, assuming that there's certain things like, let's say, you can use telephones, right? So you can transmit. You're not necessarily have to like use a runner, right? Which runners technically, I mean, like you could think of it as like a person running, but so got persons on a beach. There's a essentially your application is somebody who sits like a bunch of people who are paid to sit around on the side of the beach waiting for people who want food, right? Somebody flags it down, which is basically the app. Person there,
I like your model. I
yeah, they
think
have
it
a
would,
clipboard. They've got all of the food options, everything, right? They go and talk. Hey, what do you want? I'm going to take your order. So, all right, you can get this, 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 and they write down the order. They assemble it, right? They're putting it together like a little sheet. That's your model for your thing, and then okay, all right, good, cool. All right, let me see if I can get somebody. So they make a call up to dispatch to somebody, right, to say, hey,
I have
um,
that. Yeah.
yeah, you have a dispatcher or something. Say, hey,
Yep.
can you whatever. Now, people as they have become available have phoned into that dispatch saying, I'm available to do orders. Um, Couriers sitting in their car, they call up, hey, I'm going to do the orders. Okay, cool. They call in. Now they've got this list. They call up, hey, whatever. That dispatch might even talk to somebody who's like, hey, figure out who's close to this person on the beach. That person then goes and does their thing and then comes back. Okay, here's the ones that you can call, and here's the maybe priority order.
I like it.
Um,
I wish I could
yeah,
have. I wish we would have had this conversation before I started it, because there's other factors as well, like cancellation, and I assume that the dispatcher would support canceled orders, right? If they receive orders, then they should also receive cancellation of those orders. I would argue.
yeah, because there's someone coordinating, but you could even then say model it like, well, okay, let's say once the dispatcher finds and makes that connection, maybe they hand it off to some sort of like sub case unit or something to handle the rest of the transaction and make sure that information is flowing back and forth between the two. So anytime that when the person gets to destination one, they call up the dispatch and say, okay, we're good, okay, and then that person relays the message back to the person sitting on the beach waiting for the information. So uh,
How would you domain model that though? So would every like public, not every public operation, but with the core operations for that domain model in general always have a an actor in its signature, in its method signature,
I always have an actor in its method signature.
a courier, a dispatcher, a customer. If you're modeling core operations as if there's people running around with notepads, then if you were to domain model all that, in which when I domain model, I list out all the core operations and then I flesh out the parameters that are required in order for those operations to succeed. I don't know. It'll be an interesting kata.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you would do that. I mean, domain model. I think of domain modeling as like what are the rules that this particular actor or person needs to follow, or the and then things that they need to do in order to actually like complete the whatever they're trying to do. But then system like more of like this is more like for thinking about system design, right?
So
Or
would the actor be the the module or the namespace,
it
and
probably
their responsibilities will be the operations under that namespace or module?
um yes. Okay, so would the actor would be a component within potentially like a service, or it could be the entire service if you want to go real microservices, I guess. Um,
Okay.
ignoring like deployment units. Um, I mean, a a a actor would be a service, right? One to one, and then every system interaction you think about. So like I said, the guy going back to the one with the well, actually, and this applies to beach delivery too, right? Somebody is probably sitting at a desk waiting for things to get done, and as soon as that transaction completes, they're getting a message saying that, hey, this we owe this person this much money now,
And
and
then
that
yeah,
person from the service will okay file it away until they're ready to get paid or whatever, or they'll record it, and then when the time comes in, they'll go out and write the check out. But they might not if somebody else comes by and says, hey, we've identified some fraud person who is looking at all these cases and looking for things that are abnormal, comes over and says, no, this is bad looking. We don't want you to pay this person because this might have been done in like fraudulent, or we might be breaking a law or something. So they come and put a post-it note, don't pay Johnny.
uh,
Then when they receive the signal that says, hey, Johnny's asking for money, or wants his money, they go and say, well, I got a post-it note saying I'm not going to do that. So
but doesn't all
like,
this
no.
sound devil's advocate? Doesn't all
Yeah.
this sound like what we were taught from kindergarten about the benefits of object oriented programming? We model real world systems. How is this paradigm any different from what we were drinking the Kool Aid of?
Well, I think it's that object oriented works at I think if you think of an object as a service, it works that way because every service you write is object oriented. You have a courier service, right? That is an object. It's
Well,
a thing. It's
I
an
think
actor.
I know the answer to my question. With object oriented and modeling real world systems, we had a habit of literally forcing classes to have state and behavior, um, instead of segregating the two.
Yeah. And so think about it this way, is that if I'm sitting down as the actor in the cubicle, I have a bunch of potential like algorithms or rules written down that I've either memorized or I have like procedures, right? And but I don't have that necessarily on my data. Like those two things are totally separate. Like I might have a sheet that keeps track of Johnny's balance that I put over here, right? But I don't also have on that balance sheet like how to sum the balance sheet. Right? I might have a column for the sum where I'm going to do an aggregate, but I'm not going to like it doesn't make sense that way. But it makes sense that me as an actor have both data that I keep and record, and there's procedures that I do, or functions that I process to come up with answers and things like that. So I think of like functional programming to me makes really sense for modeling what I do as an individual within the system, and objects make sense for me as how I interact with the rest of the world. When I after I do my little, my piece of work, right? And so like an F sharp service, if you think about it like that, um, within it could be totally functional. Everything I do is purely well documented, defined. Everything's functional. All of my interactions and everything are, you know, obviously my drawer could get busted or whatever, and we have to deal with, like, I can't actually save it because my drawer is busted on my repository, whatever. Like, all that could be perfectly functional, but when you're interacting with me at a service level, like, you're sending me in a message that says, hey, I need you to do this, or I need this information, or this happened, respond to it. um, I could be thought of as an object that maintains both data and operations, right? um,
Mm.
so I think, like, maybe object oriented works at, when you think about it at the service level, but maybe it's not as helpful at the, like, at that, like, sub level. I don't know. Like, within the service, it's probably better to have a bunch of functional services that are. And actually, you know what? Thinking about, like, Microsoft Orleans and the way that that's structured, the actual actor model. So the actor model, like, you'll hear a lot of people talk about this, and it could be Akka or any of these. It's like, what those represent are actual microservices. Like, every single actor is a microservice, and it has signals that it receives, and then operations and stuff it does, and data it might save off and all that. But they're all just little microservices. Those are purely, like, structured as objects, but everything that they do within, once you've received a signal, can be totally functional. So I think that's, I don't know. I don't think these two things are too separate. So
Do you think you would succeed as an architect?
would I succeed as an architect? I think it depends on the type of architect.
Domain architect.
Like, modeling the problem and thinking about how services interact. Yeah, I could probably do that work. I don't think I could do something where it's like, I'm not as good as, like, there are people who are very analytical about thinking about scalability and, like, how many machines do we need, and,
That's solutions
like,
architect.
yeah, I couldn't do that work. I'm just not that. I don't care.
Interested.
Not interested. I don't care. Like, I want to make sure that I design for those kinds of things, but I don't, and that the system will work with it, but I don't.
So,
Yeah.
do you think you can herd developers into uh, executing your vision
Executing the vision.
or implementing your vision? I think that's a better word.
I think it depends.
That's the biggest part
Uh,
that I think is literally herding developers and managing the development effort as a liaison between business stakeholders and and developers, and being a politician and trying your best to control the segregation of concerns, or influencing the segregation of concerns, even though people that uh, have a higher bill rate tend to not understand the consequences of their decisions when they probably shouldn't be making those decisions in the first place. And that's some of the things that I think encompass some of the responsibilities of a architect, especially at the domain level. I think it's more of a politician than anything.
yeah, I mean, it's. I assume it's a skill that needs practice, and so with practice, I could probably enough. But I think the thing is that I do this work anyways. I definitely pick up systems design and, or, like, domain modeling and thinking about how services should exist and what they should do, and I care deeply about, like, like, what is this service trying to accomplish? How does it fit into the world? What is its mission, or what is its goal? Again, I think about, like, now I think about every service as, like, if this was just a person in a cubicle, what are they doing?
I like it. You
Yeah,
introduced me to something I never really considered.
yeah. And so what are they doing? And I go, does it make sense for this person to do this thing? And two, like thinking about like you've brought up before, like what parts of the systems will change. Like, should I in the cubicle, should I would it be better for me to know about all the, let's say there's five different avenues we could pay somebody through, right? I could pay them through this or this or this, but I have other responsibilities like aggregating totals and stuff like that. Should I know about these five different services, or is that somebody else's job? Like, do they actually monitor and keep track of all your bank information? And between me and that person who sits in the other cubicle doing that, I pass, hey, pay Johnny this
Yeah,
much, and they
that would
figure
be
out.
your partner as a person,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, so we might be in the same department, right? As a in a unit, we are definitely in the same department, right? But the actual separation of what my job is versus their job, and getting that down into system level, it's like, yeah, we could do the same job if this responsibility is small enough, like, and stuff like that. But as soon as it becomes too big for me to abstractly try to figure out that plus the work that I'm doing, maybe it actually in the long term makes sense for that to be somebody else's job.
And you know what
So
happens? Uh, they may spend like maybe 2 3 weeks attempting to follow that vision, and then like, oh, we got deadlines, we got to ship, and then they'll just dismiss everything that
yeah,
you've tried to structure, and they just start shipping technical debt,
I
shipping
think that's
technical debt, shipping
yeah,
technical debt.
I think that's fine as long as you just have as long as you don't forget, right?
It's
And
not
I
going to
haven't
get
forgot it.
done.
Like, no, no, dude, I haven't forgot it. Like, there's a service that came in like into our system months ago, and I did this exercise, and it doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense as this in the way that it's structured from like an API perspective. It doesn't make sense. There's probably a better way to do it if we make the decision between is this choreographed or orchestrated, which is an interesting thing too that you could play with people. It's like, do I have a person who's like a manager who sits there and says, okay, send a message to this person, send a message to this person who tries to track these types of things, or does an event happen and everybody just receives the email or the message, and then they just like they know what to do and respond rather than being told what to do. So the example is like if fraud happens, let's say in a situation, and I'm the cubicle guy paying. In one situation, you have the manager coming over and putting the post-it note saying, "Don't pay this person," and putting the post-it note there. In the other, I get a notification that Johnny has been flagged for fraud or has been found to be potentially fraudulent, and I know as part of my rule set that if that happens, then I'm going to not pay them. And those are two very different things. Um, but then you could think about like interactions. It's like, now is it good to have a manager that goes around to every single person and has to know, and every time you add some new capability to the enterprise, that this manager now needs to be going told, okay, now you have to go and update this person too, or this person too, and do these actions. And it's like all these rules are around me rather than having that independently loosely and just each one being atomic and being able to handle it separately. Um, Definitely leans towards choreographed type stuff, but maybe there's another smell test in there where something that is definitely should be orchestrated. It makes total sense to centralize that. Anyways, what I was saying is like I had a service that came in that it acts as an orchestration service, but it's not modeled as that. And like part of the current work we're doing is I'm slowly morphing that and saying, no, this needs to be, if we're going to treat it as an orchestration thing, it should accept and receive that. It should be they handle the event and they orchestrate this set of activities, um, rather than model it as if it's the guy in the cubicle getting the payment. So I don't know, but that's something I've never forgot, and it's something that if I'm around will be corrected eventually. So yeah, but yeah, I mean, yeah, you do take out technical debt, but it's technical debt is like telling you know telling this person who shouldn't be doing this extra work to do the extra work for now.
Gammer
Eventually,
says
yeah,
he just hacks away. Go go go. And hi,
Yeah,
Godfather.
Godfather. Hey, hey. Anyways,
You have any plans for this weekend?
I think it's some Halloween stuff probably that I got to do. I'm guessing I got to go bowling tonight. It's my niece's birthday on Monday, but she wants to go bowling tonight. So
I can't bowl for the life of me, and I don't think I've bowled in like 10 years.
yeah, yeah, I bowl funny and it works sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't. It's just fun, I guess, just to go out and do it. But bowling will probably be having a few beers. That's
Uh,
probably about it. So, but yeah, we've got family coming up and staying here. So again, how about you?
mm, I don't have anything planned. I'll put a deposit on a new motorcycle that I don't think I can fit on.
It's too small, or
Yeah.
yeah, maybe next year I'll get a motorcycle and join the. I gotta go. I have to get my endorsement or whatever and all that. But I really want to get like an older Honda, like a smaller, older Honda. I don't know what kind they are. Is it like a? Oh gosh, what is it? Is it like a? What are the types? It's not like a crotch rocket. It's not like a chopper. Is it maybe like a cruiser? I can't remember what the other types are.
I guess so. You have adventure bikes. You have your sports bikes. You have your cafe racers. You have, yeah. What am I missing? Like you said, your cruisers. You have your.
Here, I'll send you a picture. You can tell me what type of bike this is. I'll send in the chat and this. So when you
I
open
want to.
that,
I want to say commuter bike.
the first image that you see is kind of like the kind of bike that I'd like to get. Is like a actually most of these ones maybe.
That bike is from like the 1980s.
Yeah, that's the kind of like bike that I'd like to get. Is like a some sort. Well, maybe not that one. That's the first one, but there's ones like kind of like that.
There's a. Do you see the banner under it, or is that just an impression on my machine where they show a Indian motorcycle?
Oh
It's-
yeah,
Do you want something like that?
not like that. No, as that's getting
Yeah.
more into like
So
the
those are called naked bikes.
naked bikes. They look kind of like a cross between like a.
They don't have fairings.
Oh, okay, what's a fairing? What or what?
Fairing is what the sports bikes have that hides the guts, like the pipes.
Oh, okay. So like, okay, gotcha. Yeah, so gotcha. But because it does otherwise look like what I think of as like a crotch rocket, right? But yeah, I can see how it doesn't have the it doesn't like hide the innards. Hmm.
Uh, you should get one. You just gotta be careful you don't die or become a paraplegic on it. I would imagine that Minnesota is a lot safer than Miami.
We get well, I don't know. I think people die from getting deer getting hit by deer, but people don't see
Oh
motorcycles
yeah,
ride
yeah. I haven't seen. I don't think I've seen a dead deer in Florida. I mean,
Yeah,
it's probably further up north, but not in Miami.
I don't think I would. Well, gators probably eat them.
They're probably extinct because of them getting ran over by Miami drivers.
Yeah,
Like,
or the gators eat them. But I
no,
would
no.
probably only drive it like just around during the daylight, like just around town or whatever. But
If
I,
you
yeah,
if you took the people of Miami, or if you took the people of South Florida and put them in like Ohio or Pennsylvania, like there would be no more deer.
yeah,
They would go extinct from just being ran over. Like
I
that,
don't know.
they're
We get
bad.
a lot of deer that get run over here. There's a lot that are dead on the roads, but there's still tons of them.
Do they?
But
Do they? I know we're about to. We had time. What's the policy for roadkill? Do they like scrape it up and like send it to a butcher, or do they like just send it
I
to
don't
farms and it becomes like pig hog food?
I don't know. So I think the DNR usually picks up Minnesota DNR roadkill. I feel like there was okay, managing and handling of roadkill carcasses. Place the carcass on the min dot right away, vicinity of kill site. Place the carcass suitable location. It looks like they compost them here,
What does that mean?
or no, it says bury it or whatever. I don't know. Actually, I think they're just these are suggestions, but I thought there was like, I thought there was one state where it was like they made it legal where you could eat your roadkill.
I mean, you have to do it. I would imagine like within 48 hours. No,
Yeah, I mean, it would you'd want to take care of it right away. I think that's any time you'd kill an animal
is
event. But
48 hours too late?
I don't know. I suppose it depends on if you get the blood out because bacteria starts to infect meat pretty quickly, I guess. So you got to get like the guts out, and then you got to drain the blood, and then I think it lasts for a little longer if you do that, and then from there you got to process meat and get it frozen or whatever, or eat it or
You
dry
sound
it.
like a serial killer. Okay.
Well, I've seen. Well, my brother one time, like my brother shot a deer, and he hung it up in the my dad's garage, and he was processing it. And man, I was like, "Whoa." I don't want to see how the sausage is made. So, but I don't know. I'd still eat it though. Animal gave its life. You gotta make sure you use it.
Yeah. Hey, it's been
All
real.
right. Yep.
Enjoy your weekend.
Yep. You too. Have a good one. See ya.
Yeah. See you.
Bye.
Bye. Hey, see you, gambler. See you, Godfather.